24 years old, in the prime of his life, one of the most talented safeties the NFL had ever seen, and on a November night in Miami, Sean Taylor lay in his own home, bleeding from a gunshot wound to his leg, with his 18-month-old daughter sleeping in another room. He fought for his life for 2 days, and then he was gone, killed by intruders who broke into his house thinking no one was home. That moment changed everything, not just for his family, not just for his team, but for everyone who understood that football, for all its violence and glory, is just a game, and life can be taken in an instant. Sean Taylor is not the only name on this list. He is one of 10. 10 men whose deaths were so sudden, so shocking, so devastating that they forced the entire football world to stop and remember that the players we watch are not superheroes. They are human. Some of these men died in accidents that could have happened to anyone. Some died as heroes, sacrificing themselves to save others. Some took their own lives after years of brain damage caused by the very game that made them famous. And some were taken by violence that had nothing to do with football at all. These stories are not easy to tell, but they need to be told because these men deserve to be remembered, not just for how they died, but for how they lived. These are 10 tragic deaths that shook the NFL forever. We begin with the only player in NFL history to die during a game, Chuck Hughes. October 24, 1971, the Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears, Tiger Stadium, a crisp fall afternoon. The Lions were losing, the game was nearly over, and in the final minutes, wide receiver Chuck Hughes ran a route, came back to the huddle, and suddenly collapsed. Teammates thought he had been hit. The referees looked for a flag, but there was no contact, no defender near him. Chuck Hughes had simply fallen to the ground. Medical staff rushed onto the field. They performed CPR right there on the turf, while players from both teams stood frozen, watching in horror. An ambulance took him to the hospital, but it was too late. Chuck Hughes was pronounced dead from a massive heart attack caused by undiagnosed coronary artery disease. He was 28 years old. He had a family history of heart disease that was never detected during team physicals. His wife was watching the game on television. She saw him collapse, she saw the ambulance, and she knew. Chuck Hughes' death led to immediate changes in how the NFL screens players for heart conditions. Defibrillators became standard equipment on every sideline. Cardiac screenings became mandatory for all players entering the league. Hughes died doing what he loved, playing football in front of thousands of fans, but his death forced the league to confront a reality it had ignored for decades. Players could die during games from causes that had nothing to do with the violence of the sport itself. His number 85 has never been officially retired by the Lions, but no player has worn it since. And every time a player collapses on the field today, every time medical staff sprint onto the turf with a defibrillator, Chuck Hughes is the reason those protocols exist. Number 9, Jerome Brown. A 6'2", 300-pound defensive tackle who was one of the most dominant interior linemen of his era. Brown was selected 9th overall in the 1987 draft by the Philadelphia Eagles and immediately became a cornerstone of Buddy Ryan's aggressive attacking defense. 2-time Pro Bowler, a leader who set the tone in practice and in games. Players feared lining up across from him. On June 25, 1992, Jerome Brown was driving his Corvette on a wet road in his hometown of Brooksville, Florida. His 12-year-old nephew Gus was in the passenger seat. The car hydroplaned, lost control, and crashed into a utility pole. Both Jerome Brown and his nephew Gus were killed instantly. He was 27 years old, entering what should have been the prime of his career. The Eagles were devastated. His teammate Reggie White, one of his closest friends, spoke at his funeral and called Brown one of the greatest players and people he had ever known. The Eagles retired his number 99. A generation of Philadelphia fans still remember exactly where they were when they heard the news. Jerome Brown's death was not caused by football. It was a car accident on a rainy day, a moment of lost control that took a young man in his prime and shattered everyone who knew him. The Eagles wore his number 99 on their helmets for the entire 1992 season, and to this day, his legacy lives in Philadelphia as a reminder of what could have been. Number 8, Derrick Thomas. If you watched football in the 1990s, you knew this name. 9-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, the Kansas City Chiefs' all-time sack leader with 126.5 career sacks. A man who once sacked Seattle Seahawks quarterback Dave Krieg's 7 times in a single game, a record that still stands. On January 23, 2000, Thomas was driving on Interstate 435 near Kansas City when his Chevrolet Suburban hit a patch of ice and flipped multiple times. Thomas was not wearing a seatbelt. He was partially ejected from the vehicle and suffered a catastrophic spinal cord injury that paralyzed him from the chest down. He was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency surgery. Doctors worked around the clock to save his life. For 2 weeks, Thomas fought. His teammates visited. His family prayed. The entire city of Kansas City held its breath. And then, on February 8, 2000, a blood clot traveled from his legs to his lungs. Derrick Thomas died from a pulmonary embolism, a complication from the injuries sustained in the crash. He was 33 years old. His death devastated Kansas City. Over 15,000 people attended his public memorial service. The Chiefs retired his number 58. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2009, and his foundation, the Third and Long Foundation, continues his work helping at-risk children in Kansas City. Derrick Thomas was not just a football player. He was a pillar of his community, and his death, caused by a moment on an icy road, reminded everyone that no matter how strong you are, no matter how invincible you seem on the field, life is fragile. Number 7, and this death changed how the NFL approaches player safety in extreme heat. Korey Stringer, a 6'4", 335-pound offensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, Pro Bowler, one of the best and most reliable linemen in football, a man who showed up every single day and did his job without complaint. On July 31, 2001, during training camp in Mankato, Minnesota, Stringer participated in a morning practice session in 80-degree heat with oppressive humidity. He struggled. Teammates noticed he was laboring, moving slower than usual, breathing heavily. He left practice early, which was unusual for a player known for his toughness and work ethic. The next day, August 1st, he returned for another practice. The temperature was 91 degrees. The heat index, factoring in humidity, was over 110 degrees. Stringer participated in the practice, and then he collapsed. His body temperature reached 108.8 degrees. He was suffering from exertional heat stroke, a life-threatening condition caused by the body's inability to cool itself during intense physical activity in extreme heat. He was rushed to the hospital. Doctors packed his body in ice, trying desperately to lower his core temperature, but the damage was already done. His organs were failing. At 1:13 a.m. on August 2, 2001, Korey Stringer died. He was 27 years old. He left behind a wife and a 3-year-old son. His death led to immediate and sweeping changes across the NFL. Mandatory hydration protocols were implemented. Limits on practice intensity in extreme heat became standard. Athletic trainers were required at every practice. Cold water immersion tubs became mandatory equipment on every sideline. The Korey Stringer Institute was established at the University of Connecticut to study and prevent heat-related deaths in athletes. Korey Stringer's death was preventable, and the NFL knows it. That is why his legacy is written into every heat safety rule the league follows today. Every time a coach limits practice in the heat, every time a player is submerged in a cold tub, Korey Stringer is the reason those protocols exist. Number 6, and this is the most recent death on this list, Dwayne Haskins. 15th overall pick in the 2019 NFL Draft by Washington,
Haskins came out of Ohio State as a Heisman Trophy finalist and one of the most highly touted quarterback prospects in the country. His NFL career did not go as planned. He struggled with consistency, decision-making, and off-field maturity. Washington released him after 2 seasons. He signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021, hoping for a fresh start, a chance to rebuild his career under veteran quarterback Ben Roethlisberger and coach Mike Tomlin. On the morning of April 9, 2022, Haskins was in South Florida training with Steelers teammates during the offseason. He was walking on Interstate 595 near Fort Lauderdale when he was struck and killed by a dump truck. He was 24 years old. The circumstances surrounding why he was on the highway are still unclear and were the subject of investigation. Reports indicated his car had run out of gas and he was attempting to cross the highway to get help. The Steelers organization, his teammates, and the entire football community mourned his loss. Mike Tomlin released a statement calling Haskins a young man with a world of potential. Dwayne Haskins was just beginning to turn his life and career around. He had a daughter. He had dreams of redemption, of proving that he belonged in the NFL. And in a single moment on a Florida highway, all of it was gone. His death was a reminder that life does not care about second chances or redemption arcs. It can end at any moment, without warning, without fairness.
Number 5, and this is the story of a man who died a hero. Joe Delaney, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. In 1981, his rookie season, Delaney rushed for 1,201 yards and was named AFC Rookie of the Year. He was electric, fast, explosive, elusive, the future of the Chiefs' offense and one of the most exciting young players in football. On June 29, 1983, Delaney was at Chenet Park in Monroe, Louisiana, near his hometown. 3 children were playing near a pond. They waded into the water and quickly found themselves in trouble, unable to swim and struggling in deep water that was over their heads. Joe Delaney heard the screams. He did not hesitate. Despite not knowing how to swim himself, Delaney jumped into the water to try to save them. He managed to push one child towards safety, giving that child a chance to survive, but the weight of the other 2 children, both of whom were panicking and grabbing onto him, and his own inability to swim, dragged him under. Joe Delaney drowned trying to save those children. He was 24 years old. 1 child survived, 2 children and Joe Delaney died in that pond. President Ronald Reagan honored Delaney posthumously with the Presidential Citizens Medal. The Chiefs retired his number 37. A statue of Delaney stands outside Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. Joe Delaney did not die because of football. He died because he saw children in danger and refused to stand by and do nothing. He sacrificed his own life trying to save people he did not know. That is heroism in its purest, most selfless form, and his legacy will live forever in Kansas City and beyond. Number 4. Dave Duerson, 4-time Pro Bowl safety, 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Chicago Bears in 1985 and the New York Giants in 1990. After retiring from football, Duerson became a successful businessman, serving on the board of multiple companies. But he began experiencing symptoms that terrified him. Memory loss, confusion, mood swings, severe depression, blinding headaches. Duerson had spent 11 years absorbing violent hits in the NFL, and he believed his brain had been damaged by those hits. On February 17, 2011, Dave Duerson sent text messages to his ex-wife and family members asking that his brain be donated to research. Then he went into his home, placed a gun against his chest, and pulled the trigger. He did not shoot himself in the head. He deliberately shot himself in the chest so that his brain could be preserved and studied. He was 50 years old. Researchers at Boston University's Center for the Study of Traumatic Encephalopathy examined his brain and found clear evidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. Duerson's death became one of the most important and tragic moments in the fight to expose the NFL's concussion crisis. He gave his brain to science in the most final way possible, and what researchers found in his brain tissue has helped change football forever,
leading to new rules, new protocols, and a greater understanding of the long-term damage caused by playing this game.
Number 3. Junior Seau. And this is the death that forced the NFL to confront what it had been denying for decades. Seau played 20 seasons in the NFL, almost all of them with the San Diego Chargers. 12 Pro Bowls, 6-time first-team All-Pro, one of the most beloved linebackers in the history of professional football, a man whose energy, passion, and leadership defined an entire franchise for 2 decades. After retiring in 2010, Seau struggled. Friends noticed changes, family members saw differences in his behavior, mood swings, insomnia, irritability, depression that seemed to come out of nowhere. On May 2, 2012, Junior Seau shot himself in the chest at his home in Oceanside, California. Like Dave Duerson before him, he did not shoot himself in the head. He shot himself in the chest. He was 43 years old. His family donated his brain to the National Institutes of Health. Researchers found evidence of CTE throughout his brain tissue. Junior Seau had spent 2 decades absorbing hits, making tackles, and leading one of the most physical defenses in football, and those hits had destroyed his brain. His death became a turning point in how the public viewed football. The NFL could no longer deny the connection between the sport and long-term brain damage. Lawsuits followed, a massive settlement followed, rule changes designed to limit head contact followed, but none of it brought Junior Seau back. His legacy is complicated. He was one of the greatest to ever play, and the game he loved killed him.
Number 2, Pat Tillman, and this is the story that transcends football entirely. Tillman was a safety for the Arizona Cardinals, an undersized overachiever who was told he was too small to play in the NFL, and then became one of the hardest hitters in the league. In May of 2000, Tillman turned down a multi-million-dollar contract offer from the Cardinals to enlist in the United States Army following the September 11th terrorist attacks. He walked away from guaranteed millions in a football career to serve his country. Tillman and his brother Kevin both enlisted. Tillman completed Army Ranger School, one of the most difficult training programs in the military. He was deployed to Iraq in 2003 and then to Afghanistan in 2004. On April 22, 2004, during a mission in the mountains near the Afghan-Pakistan border, Pat Tillman was killed. The initial military report stated he was killed by enemy fire during an ambush. He was honored as a hero who died fighting the enemy. A Silver Star and Purple Heart were awarded. But the truth was different. Pat Tillman was killed by friendly fire. He was shot multiple times by members of his own unit in a case of mistaken identity during a chaotic firefight in a canyon. The Army initially covered up the circumstances of his death, providing false information to his family and the public. His family, led by his mother, Mary Tillman, fought for years to uncover the truth, demanding investigations and accountability. Pat Tillman gave up millions of dollars in a football career to serve his country, and he died because of a tragic mistake that the United States military tried to hide. He was 27 years old. The Arizona Cardinals retired his number 40. His legacy is sacrifice, service, and a painful reminder of the complexity and cost of war.
Number 1, Sean Taylor. And this is the death that still haunts the NFL. Taylor was a safety for Washington, selected 5th overall in the 2004 NFL Draft out of the University of Miami, 2-time Pro Bowler, one of the most physically gifted and instinctive defensive players the league had ever seen. Coaches said he had a 6th sense for where the ball was going. Quarterbacks feared throwing in his direction. On November 25, 2007, intruders broke into Taylor's home in the Palmetto Bay area of Miami while he was there recovering from a knee injury. Taylor was in the house with his girlfriend, Jackie Garcia, and their 18-month-old daughter, also named Jackie. The intruders did not know anyone was home. They thought the house would be empty. Taylor heard them. He grabbed a machete he kept near his bed and confronted them. One of the intruders, 17-year-old Eric Rivera Jr., fired a single gunshot. The bullet struck Taylor in the upper thigh, severing his femoral artery. Taylor was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital. Doctors worked desperately to save his life. He had lost massive amounts of blood. His family flew to Miami. His teammates prayed. The entire football world waited. On November 27, 2007, Sean Taylor died. He was 24 years old. The investigation revealed the break-in was not random. One of the men involved, Venja Hunte, had previously done work for Taylor's family and knew the layout of the house. They thought Taylor would be in Washington with the team. They were wrong. Sean Taylor died protecting his family, his girlfriend, his daughter. Washington retired his number 21. Over 10,000 people attended his funeral. His daughter was too young to remember him. Sean Taylor's death was not caused by football, but it is forever part of football history. Because we never got to see what he could have become. We never got to see him in his prime. We never got to see if he would have been a Hall of Famer, which everyone who watched him believed he would. All we have are memories of a player who was taken far too soon. 10 men, 10 lives that ended too soon. Some died in accidents, some in acts of heroism. Some took their own lives after years of brain damage inflicted by the game they loved, and some were victims of violence that had nothing to do with football at all. These deaths are not entertainment, they are tragedies. Reminders that the men who wear helmets and pads are human beings, fathers, sons, brothers, heroes, and their lives matter far more than any game. If this video meant something to you, please subscribe, share it with someone who loves football, and most importantly, remember these names, not just for how they died, but for how they lived.